Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hockey Family. I had said last video I was going to do a follow-up with some of the things you can make with the ingredients I mentioned at the end of the video. And this is a no-bake protein ball recipe that my wife had developed. And we think it's pretty good. Henry seems to enjoy it. And there's some nuance to it and some variations that you can do to change the macros around as you see fit and things that might help you. So without further ado, this is just a no-bake recipe that you can make. And we hope that you enjoy it. We hope you can share back some recipes that you enjoy as well. The first thing you're going to need is peanut butter. It's about 1.5 cups of peanut butter. Now, last video I showed you one that we tend to use sometimes, which is just plain Jif. There are some other ingredients added to these peanut butters that you may want to avoid, or they may not fit your macros that you want. So let me just show you one other trick you can use. You can use a regular peanut butter that's just peanuts. So this is 100% peanuts. There's no other salt, molasses, anything that's sometimes added to the Jif products. You can just use regular 100% peanuts. This is pretty smooth. You do have to stir it a lot because the oils will precipitate out. So if you stir it up, it ends up working pretty well. Another hack that I like to use personally, just because of my diet and the macronutrients that I like to use and utilize for my workouts and so forth, is using just a dehydrated peanut butter. Something like PB2 or PB Fit is really good. This is only 1.5 grams of fat per serving. You take a couple tablespoons of this, mix it with water. It does smooth out just like peanut butter. So you can use half of this along with the peanut butter and you still get the full taste of the regular peanut butter while cutting down your fat content quite a bit. But anyway, 1.5 cups of peanut butter. That's the first thing that you're gonna need. Okay, once you've got your peanut butter all set, next thing you're gonna need is about 1/2 cup of honey. There's many different honeys you can buy, raw honey and so forth. Depending on price and what your family enjoys, you might pick a different version. We just have 100% honey, and that's it. And it tends to be pretty tasty. Gives it a sweetness, and I think it's one of the best parts of the recipe, honestly. Okay, now that you have your honey added, the next thing you want to do is add oats. Sometimes the recipe calls for old-fashioned oats. I prefer the quick oats, honestly. I feel like they mix better. They're so fine that they end up not being as chewy when you get ready to eat them. I just find that they're a much better product. So 1 1/3 cup of oats, and then we mix those on together and go from there. So now that you've added the oats, the next piece is going to be the protein powder. Whether you buy the protein wholesale or you buy it in a jug, similar to this, serving size is usually 1 scoop. For this particular variety, 1 scoop is about 31 grams. I recommend getting a food scale so you can make everything as accurate as possible. When I measured this out, 1 scoop was about 1/2 cup, which means it's about 31 grams. However, I recommend going a little bit heavier on the protein as opposed to just relying on the nut butter for your protein, just due to the higher fat content. This is 8 grams of protein, but 16 grams of fat per serving, which is one of the reasons I recommended using perhaps a lower fat version as part of the recipe. That being said, when I measured mine out and leveled it, I got to just about over 1/2 cup. It was about 43 grams of protein, which we find sufficient for the recipe. Okay, just a couple steps left. We added a pinch of salt. For ours, we used a Himalayan sea salt. We tend to find that this works pretty well. Some of the CrossFit athletes I've listened to in the past and various podcasts have recommended sometimes using the Himalayan sea salt and other salts like this, just for some of the micronutrients that you get in there, less cramps and so forth. I can say I tend to find that being the case since I've utilized it. The final piece is going to be chocolate chips of your choice. When this recipe was first brought out by my wife, she recommended using dark chocolate chips, which I think is reasonable. They tend to be a little bit less sweet, so you've got a lot of honey, you've got the protein powder, which tends to bring some sweetness into it, and this is just a little extra treat. So about 1/2 cup of these, you'll put this on some parchment paper, which I'll show you, put in the fridge for about an hour, and then it's all done. Okay, so we mix it all together. Comes out looking almost like a cookie dough or a batter, and then we lay it on some parchment paper. So I tend to be focused a little bit on how much I'm getting per serving in terms of protein, carbs, and fat, or the major macronutrients. In order to figure that out, you just divide the amount by the number of squares or balls or however many you put on the parchment paper. So you divide the protein powder, you divide the peanut butter, you divide the oats, and then you get your protein, carbs, and fat, depending upon how many you've laid out on the parchment paper. Once this is done, you put it in the fridge for about an hour, and then they're ready to enjoy. So I just make a pretty much small dollop using a teaspoon. put them down like this. Okay, so an hour has passed. As you can see, I made about 22 of these, kind of in a nice little ball pattern. Some are larger and some are smaller. If you just eat two, all the macronutrients balance out. I know my Labrador friend is quite excited about these as well. So we hope that you enjoy them. If you have a recipe or something that you'd like to see or something that you'd like to share, please comment below. I got this recipe from @NancySpins on Instagram. I'll link that above. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll be back soon with another one. Take care.